This presentation is on best practices for proctoring your own exams virtually, a temporary solution. So this temporary solution may be for you if you are currently working remotely, if you don't have an online proctoring service readily available, if it's time to test your students and you cannot meet them on campus, or if you don't have time to wait until you've been trained with your proctoring service, or if you don't have time to wait on those resources to become available. So for example, I will be using Blackboard Collaborate because my institution is using Blackboard Ultra, and Collaborate is embedded within Blackboard Ultra. So all of our students have access to Blackboard Collaborate within the course itself, and there's no setup for instructors for Blackboard Collaborate. It is as easy as clicking join session within the course. All you have to do is just meet the students at that scheduled time. So unlike Zoom, where you have to set up that session and send out that link, with Blackboard Collaborate, all you have to do is meet the students at that time. Here's how. So I'm going to go through some of the steps to what I did. I did this the week that faculty were told to work remotely. That was test week for me. So that was some weeks ago. That was test week. We were told to work remotely. So I had to come up with a solution, because at that time we did not have Lockdown Browser and Respondus Monitor. So this is a situation, if you do not have Lockdown Browser or Respondus Monitor, this is just a temporary fix for that, okay? Set up different times for students to sign up for testing. And I'm going to go to my course in Blackboard Ultra right now. And as you can see, I set up a tab that says Test Scheduler. I just made that up on the spot, okay? Test Scheduler. And what I did was created a Google form, so that students can, it's a simple Google form. Put your last name, first name, choose an available time, for example. And I changed these times. These times are different from what they were. This is going to be for the next test, but these, give them some options, because really you do not want to test them all at the same time. Okay, so what they had to do was schedule that time. And if you know anything about Google Forms, you can go in on your end and look at the times. You can sort it by day so that you can organize it yourself. You can take these times off once too many students are signing up for. So, because, for example, if the last opportunity is Friday, April 17th at 3 p.m., of course, they're going to try to all pile up on the last day, right? So once you need to monitor that to see whether or not those sections, those slots are filling up, and you want to take that off the table once they fill up. I recommend that you don't proctor more than about 7 at a time, but you can decide on that. Sending pre-instructions or make them available. This is very important that you send them instructions. As you can see in my course, I have a folder that says exams, and I have exam instructions. And it's probably best if you send this by email. So these are the preliminary instructions to schedule an available time to take your test or activity. Use the test scheduler. So I wanted them to sign up for a time first. The dates and times are first come, first served. Sometimes will become unavailable depending on the number of people who have already scheduled to take their exam during that time. Then you can say you will proctor that exam and how I'm proctoring via Blackboard Collaborate. Then I explain you need to meet me a couple minutes before your scheduled time so we can really that's the time for you to give them some instructions. For example, I put it in a chat. Make sure that you have a pencil, scratch paper, for example. Instructions like that. Instructions like get rid of everything off your desk, things, preliminary things like that. Please sign up for Remind if you have not already. I suggest that you have everybody to sign up for the Remind app. It doesn't give them your number. You don't have their number, but it is a way for you to text them. Okay, so I like Remind, and that if, for example, they don't show up at the scheduled time, you can send them a text really quickly. All right, and then I have some more instructions. For the actual test, you would need an adequate amount of scratch paper. So I give them all of these instructions. Another important thing, no one is allowed in the room during the exam. And if this happens, tell them what to do. Politely tell them that you are currently taking a proctor exam and you are not allowed to have anyone in the room. And also I put in there, in the future, be strategic about the time you schedule your exam. Please consider not scheduling your exam during a time that doesn't allow you to be in a space completely alone while taking the exam. That's very important that they know they should be alone and that no one should be in the room. Your video and audio must be on during the proctor exam. So I had a situation where their video wasn't working. So you have to really tell them that if something isn't working, they need to borrow a functional laptop or perhaps order a webcam in time for their exam. Use the math editor too. I'm a math instructor, so when they put in their responses, when appropriate, I want them to use the math editor too. It looks like a little function symbol. So I don't want them to use shortcuts, basically. I want them to actually type out the exponents the way they're supposed to look, for example. And I give them how much time they have. And I tell them it's imperative that they don't be late for the exam. And I tell them that I could shave off those minutes that they were late from their exam. And you decide on whether you will do that or not. Especially if you have back-to-back exams. You don't want to be late for your next exam. So you have to kind of tell them things like this so that they won't be late. Create the test in Blackboard. I have a test in Blackboard. Of course, you probably already have your test. As you can see, I'm going to click it really quickly. But as you can see, I have the time limit on here, the percentage, for example, and I have some instructions. I tell them do not leave the exam. They have to complete it in one sitting. I only give them one attempt, for example. So I try to give them more than just multiple choice questions. They have essay type questions, as well as explain why you chose your answer, for example. Now, one other thing that I do is I have honor code academic honesty agreement. So before they even can access their test, they have to agree that they will not cheat. Okay, so before taking an exam, so they need to go in here. You must agree to the following statement. I so pledge on my honor that I will not give or receive any unauthorized assistance on this assignment examination. I will not use any forms of cheating, such as notes, phones, or other devices. Because, to be honest with you, if you don't have lockdown browser, how would you know they are not doing something? So when I was researching how to proctor my own exams, I saw something that said that them agreeing to some type of academic honesty or honor code deters cheating. So we can't guarantee that they're not cheating if you are not using lockdown browser or anything else, right? So I wanted to put this in the password folder so that they first agree to this, that they agree to the statement or they do not agree. And also I have a question for the password and they don't know the password, while you are proctoring them, while you are going through this with them, you are reading this to them and telling them to agree to the statement or not agree to the statement. But they have to get this correct if they want to move on. And they have to get the password correct as well. And you are telling them at this point, when you are proctoring them, to put in a specific password. And it can be as complicated as you want it to be or not, since they don't know the password. And then they must get these two questions correct in order to open up the test. And as you can see, my test is set up as a conditional availability and is available based on multiple conditions. First, they must earn those 2 points from that honor code academic honesty agreement, right? And another condition is they couldn't access it until that day of testing. So definitely create your test, assign a password assignment. That password assignment opens the test. And one thing about Ultra, if you're using Ultra, once you put that password in, you need to tell students to just wait a few seconds and refresh their page at the top. Refresh the page, because that password needs to download, and so that test will become available. Include an honor code. We talked about that. Meet students a few minutes before their scheduled exams. And if you are proctoring more than one student at a time, which is very likely, put the students in their own breakout groups. And I'm going to show you how that's done. Now, when you first start, within the chat, I usually type "Welcome to your exam," right? And I'll put in the chat box, you need scratch paper, pencils, and a scientific calculator. And I usually say put away any notes, close all open programs or browser windows. Again, that's very important if you don't have lockdown browser. Lockdown browser will actually not allow students to open up other browsers as forms of cheating. But since if you don't have it, then you're gonna have to just tell them, please close all your browser windows now. Turn your phone on silent. And one thing you want them to do is make sure that they pan the room, right? Before you get started. Make sure that they pan the room. So, for example, if we have a student, let's call this student LFA. LFA, you want LFA to pan her surroundings, and especially where she is actually writing her notes, okay? So what you'll do is tell them to pick up their computer and pan the room so you can see their surroundings. Now, it's very important that you are comfortable with their surroundings. For example, if I saw a student with a tablet, and I would tell them to take out a few sheets from that tablet and then put the tablet away, put phones away, for example. So if you see anything that you're uncomfortable with, please let them know that they need to put those items away. So I wouldn't have allowed that tablet. I would have said, take a few sheets out of that and put the tablet somewhere else. All right, the last thing that I do for students is before they really begin, I tell them I'm going to turn off my mic so as to not distract them with any background noise. Okay, and I also tell them if it's just one person you're proctoring, you can tell them you will be able to hear them if they have a question. Just give you a few seconds to unmute your mic, okay? So if you're just proctoring one student, then tell them that you're going to turn off your mic so as to not distract them with your background noise, and also tell them you're going to be able to hear them because they're going to have their audio and video on. Make sure they have their audio and video because you want to hear their surroundings. Why? Because you want to hear if anybody's in the background telling them the answers, right? Or telling them what to put in. So you definitely want them to have their audio, both their audio and video on, and tell them you will hear them. You're not going to turn off your, you can hear them. You're just going to turn off your mic so that you won't distract them. All right. However, I would recommend that you put students in breakout groups if you have more, if you're proctoring. For example, I proctor up to 7 people at one time. So what I would do is I would put them in different breakout sessions. So the way that you can do that is, and you can put students up to 20 breakout sessions. I wouldn't recommend you proctor 20 at a time, but if you have to, I guess you have to. Okay, so what you would do is your share content tab, and there's a section that says breakout groups. And what I would do, for example, is I'll put LFA in group 1. And then that way, and then I put the next student in the next group. And look how easy that is. It was easy as me dragging them to the group. And you could create more groups, right? You could create a new group if you wanted to, if you have more students. And what you can do now is hit start. That way, the students won't hear each other and they won't distract each other, because it was a very enlightening experience the first time I did this, and I've only proctored my exam once before. And you may hear varying degrees of background noise. For example, a baby crying, music playing. Some students like to listen to music while they are concentrating. And I'm okay with that because I put them in different breakout groups. And let me show you what I mean. So, for example, group 1, I put LFA in group 1, and all you have to do is click this little arrow pointing to the right, and I'm moving to group 1, and I can see what LFA is doing. Make sure LFA has her microphone and video on so you can hear and see. Now, you don't have to tell them that you're moving from breakout group to breakout group. You can just tell them if they need you want to ask a question, use the chat box. Okay, tell them to use the chat box to ask you questions. All right, that's if you are using breakout sessions, because what will happen is you don't hear anyone but the group you're in at the time. And then I can move to group 2, for example, to the right here, that little right arrow. I'm going to move to group 2, and now you're going to see that this is Teddy. All right, so this is Teddy's group, and the great thing about this, they don't hear each other, they're not distracting each other, and you can just move from group to group the whole time. And you can always unmic yourself and ask, are you okay? Are you doing okay? I normally say, okay, I'm just checking on you right now. I'll be back. I don't really go into detail. Some students think I'm there the whole time, right? And some students kind of figure out that I'm not there the whole time, that I'm going back and forth. But make it clear that if they have a question, to ask that question in the chat box. And always be checking down here. This is the chat box. Always check for their questions. They are done, and that you kind of close them out. Don't make sure they know never to just up and leave the session without letting you know first, so that you can kind of close them out. All right, here are some other tips. And it would be a great thing if you have all your students sign up for the Remind app before the test. just in case you have technical issues or no-shows, if you see that a student scheduled their time for 3 p.m. and they are not there at 3 p.m., you can send them a quick text through Remind. And they can also respond to you, so you can wait for their response. During their exam, tell students to use the chat box to communicate with you. Again, you don't have to tell them that you're going from breakout session to breakout session. One of my students did not even know. She thought I was there the whole time, but I was going to one room to the next. Troubleshooting. Some students are just going to have issues with video and or audio. Normally what I do when that happens, if students are good to go, meaning they put their password in, they're able to start working on their test, that's when I put them in a breakout session. So everybody who is in, I put them in breakout sessions, and the people who are having technical issues, I keep them in the main room, and I work with trying to figure out why they're having technical issues. Sometimes it's just that they're maybe their Wi-Fi or their bandwidth, and I tell them to move around in their home or wherever they are to get the best connectivity at that time. Sometimes they just did not click on the mic or the video to share the video or share the mic. Sometimes you have to tell them to call in using their phones. What they can do also is you can see them on their phone. They can access Collaborate on their phone so that you can see them at all times and just use their laptop to complete their exam. All right, here are the disadvantages. Time consuming. Okay, this takes a lot of time. As you see, I set up multiple sessions to proctor the exams, and I only try to proctor no more, and honestly I didn't want to proctor no more than about 7. Okay, so it's very time consuming because an hour and 15-minute exam is really now about a 5-hour exam if you break it up into multiple sessions. Connectivity issues. Some people believe that Zoom is better on that end than Collaborate. So if you're using Zoom, you probably have a better connectivity. And students without technological resources. I have a student who did not have video, and during the time when you're told to stay at home, if there's an ordinance out there, then you know you may not be able to reach that person, even if you have that webcam or something to help them. They may not be able to get to it. Okay, a temporary solution if you do not have those resources, a proctoring service. So recommendations: tell students not to leave their session until you close them out. Please, that helps with the integrity of the whole situation, that you know that they weren't doing anything they shouldn't be doing. After their exam is over, give them further instructions such as when to expect the test to be graded. Change the password after each session. So that's important. I changed the password after each session because think about it. You gave the students the password to open the exam, right? So they could easily just give the password to another student and open the exam before the next session. So it's important that you change that password every time. And if you have lockdown browser and a Respondus Monitor, use that if you can. But again, this presentation is just in case you have not been trained on those resources, or if you just don't have those resources at this time. And so that concludes my video on some best practices to proctor your own exams virtually.